Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal moon in the ninth house. And as I have done with the rest of these moon positions thus far, I have gone online to kind of I wouldn't call it necessarily refresh my memory, but kind of bolster my own beliefs of what this would entail. And one thing that I have discovered is that certain I'll just say the sites that I've gone to, which I do consider a great wealth of information, tend to kind of leave out things that other sites bring up. So what this tells me is that everyone has the tendency to kind of leave out stuff. And also because it's funny, I have the sun in Sagittarius, and this is about the moon in the ninth house, which is ruled by Sagittarius. I do believe that we have, people that are just regular Joe Schmoes out here have the right, well, I'm a woman, but, Joanne Schmo, to be able to, put our own 2 cents into this and not just kind of regurgitate what other people are saying. So I'm going to tell you what I think in addition to that. But I do like to get, some feel for what the so-called experts say. And the two resources that I kind of skimmed through for this one are the astrocodex.com, which I find really a good source. But I also almost found even better for this particular placement, the astroclub.org for the ninth house to be a little bit better. More well-rounded. First of all, what I would say is because the moon represents our emotional nature, to have it in the ninth house is going to give the person a more detached, bigger picture type of emotional response to life. In other words, this will mean that even if somebody has the moon in a water sign, if it's in the ninth house, I believe that they will be more objective and less subjective. For instance, the three water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, and and they rule three water houses. Surprise, surprise. The fourth house, home and family, that's Cancer. The eighth house, which is the house of transformation, including death and intimacy and shared resources, that's Scorpio. The 12th house is karma, past lives, and mysticism. Okay, of course all of these have more to do with that, but so when people have planets in these houses, or when you have especially personal planets in these signs, these water signs, you may tend to be quite trapped in the past. But if you have the moon in a water sign in the ninth house, you may actually be much more objective, much more positive and broad-minded. And even though, we talk about the mind, that would be more Mercury, with the moon, because the emotions are engaged, I feel that prejudices and things like that is really of an emotional nature, more than just mental concepts. That people who exhibit prejudices, and racism and sexism are not the only prejudices. Some people feel perfectly comfortable with other types of prejudices if they feel that they have the right to engage in that because of this reason or that reason. But prejudice is prejudice, and it's we get triggered by something, and then we overgeneralize about a group of people, and then maybe even feel a certain way, prejudge. That's not a cool thing to do, but it's very irrational, it's very emotional, and therefore irrational. So this lessens the likelihood of that. This can give a person a great ethical nature. And again, with the emotions, when you think about doing something that isn't quite right, what happens? We feel that kind of visceral sock in the gut if we know that we're not really living up to our true potential. And so a person with the moon in the ninth house will tend to have high morals. Because this is also the house of religion, the house of philosophical constructs, the house of higher education. So it gives a person kind of like an elevated consciousness, I would say, in a lot of ways. And in terms of like, this is also the house of world travel. And so because the moon rules the mother may be from another country than the father. Now, Codex says that, this was interesting, I don't quite know why. I'll just read what it says. The moon in the ninth house can indicate moving to live in a different country than where the native was born. As the moon rules the mother, there's a possibility of having a mother from a different nation, religion, or race than the father. This position will definitely bring a foreigner as a husband or wife if the cusp of the seventh house falls in the Cancer sign. So I don't know why, that has anything to do with Cancer. I know that Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, but I don't know how that relates to a spouse. But I just wanted to put it out there because that might be true for some of you and you might find that very interesting. And I knew I wouldn't be able to paraphrase it very well. This, talking about the mother, because a mother's influence a lot of times can be hugely, impactful on our lives. The mother may have been more in her mind. This is a mental house, the ninth house. And that could have affected the way that she related to her child. Now, that is not abusive, but it can be if the child is a water sign, this may have felt not very nurturing because there might be more intellectual energy and involvement in, those kinds of areas of life, whether it's teaching at a college or researching or writing. That may have been a big thing. And really, the ninth house is abstract mental energy and knowledge. And so this will sometimes kind of, I would say, make the person more detached from their emotional responses and maybe even prone to intellectualizing things or using religion to kind of justify things. I didn't see it there. I'm kind of like taking that liberty to mention that because I think that could be something that goes on here, and you have to be careful about intellectualizing your emotions or by using religion to hide behind your emotions. I think that could be the case as well, because it's kind of funny. I heard that the ninth house was connected to the law, and they, in one of these sites, they mentioned something about maybe being interested in law. But the seventh house is supposed to be legal cases and things like that. So I was like, okay, well, what's the difference? What I came up with is that the ninth house is probably the laws themselves. Just like the ninth house is religious doctrine, and those are laws, same with the legal system. And it's kind of funny because I've had Capricorn transing, not Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn transing my ninth house in recent years, and I have really radically transformed my ideas of religion. And when I hear somebody, quoting some kind of scripture. I think about somebody like being legalistic and quoting a law. A lot of times people hide behind these things so that they can justify their actions. So if you have this moon position, you want to make sure that you're not too abstract emotionally and that you're not using God or using philosophy or academic, if it's academic research or something, where people, use it to justify whatever it is that they want to, instead of connecting at a deep level, at a heart-centered level. So one thing that I saw on one of these sites is that they talked about the person with the ninth house being a receptive listener and absorbing knowledge very receptively. I do believe, though, that this could be the making of an academic, even though they said that they don't necessarily want to talk, but they just absorb things. I think that there may be a good give and take, but anybody who has the moon in a particular house can soak things up and therefore be very successful with that, because the moon rules Cancer, and Cancers are known for great memories. Being in academia, which is the ninth house, is really it's very helpful to have a good memory, because if you're teaching, you have to teach facts. Now, you don't always want to have a book in front of you while you're teaching your students. So having that receptive mind that just remembers everything and doesn't have to kind of refer to anything is the best when you're lecturing. And so those are things that I found that are very interesting. And other things that this might be interesting to some people. Astrologyclub.org mentions that ninth house moon people tend to be good storytellers and love stories. And they talk about even them really getting absorbed in these stories. Usually I would think of the 12th house as being, in love with fantasy and stuff. But this has something to do with the moon, I guess. The moon is very imaginative. And so it allows people to take this information and really, run away with it, with the imagination. The ninth house is a house of publishing. So writing always is going to be associated with Sagittarians, as well as somebody who has a prominent celestial body, if you will, in the ninth house. These are personal planets or points. The moon, for instance, is a very important, influential point. So that could certainly indicate somebody who is a writer. And the thing is that, again, looking at it from the perspective of the element of water as well as the element of fire, if you have a moon in either one of these elements, you may be particularly emotional in your writing, and this is something that people pick up on right away. Whereas if your moon is in earth or air, your writing may be of a more, I was going to say air might be more technical, but maybe earth as well, something mundane, or how to types of information, like practical information. That's how I would kind of differentiate it. So one thing that I also want to say, that I didn't see anything specifically related to this. In astrologyclub.org, they said that you are in the expansive mode, discovering new things, having adventures, and visiting new places. And talking about dealing with concepts. And it might have been Codex that mentioned this idea of fluctuation or changeability with your ideas because of the moon position there. And so this is something to consider because you may change your ideas of God on a regular basis, believing one thing and then shifting to another. But it's always going to be there. It's always going to be front and center in your life that you feel that sense of emotional connection to the spiritual, to spiritual concepts, but even like I would say more religious. The 8th and the 12th houses are more mystical, I would say. The 9th house to me is more organized religion. So you may like find yourself devoted, maybe it's to a particular deity. You know, Hinduism has a lot of deities. And, oh, you know, they didn't say this that I saw. In yoga, in Hinduism, they have something called bhakti yoga. And this is a type of devotional yoga. The Hare Krishnas, for instance, are bhakti yogis, and they really believe in kirtan, which is like kind of like that celebrating, you know, chanting out loud, chanting with others, kind of that celebratory thing is really that group meditation, and with a lot of color, a lot of pageantry. And the Christian version of that would be like maybe, I don't know, maybe the Baptists, fundamentalists, Pentecostals, people who put a lot of, you know, yeah, like the Baptists, you know. I don't know about, you know, I think about the gospel music, you know, the black Baptist church. I don't know about the white, if it's as emotional. I think I've been maybe to a white Baptist service, but certainly in the American experience, the black, you know, Baptist, or, you know, I'm trying to think of other, like, you know, I'm assuming like Pentecostal types of, where there's a lot of, you know, singing and really just heartfelt stuff happening. Heart chakra, the moon, you know, the emotions being kind of engaged versus more detached kinds of ways of like the Buddhism is very detached. It's kind of intellectual in the mind. But who knows? Maybe if you have the moon in Aquarius or Gemini, you enjoy the intellectual way of dealing with religion. Who knows? I mean, perhaps, but I'm thinking of that emotional connection to religion. And yeah, so that I think is probably a lure or very attractive. And the other thing too is being, Codex mentions the dreamer and the visionary, you know, and definitely somebody who has the moon in the 9th house, you may be, you know, like saving the world, right? And being a do-gooder. And this can lead some people to think that, you know, maybe your emotions are even engaged in this. And if you feel like you can't do it, does it mean that you feel let down? If you're trying to save the world and it seems like it's not happening, how does that affect you emotionally? And being able to be realistic about, because Jupiter rules the 9th house. And Jupiter tends to be quite over the top. And so you may be emotionally over the top. Maybe you have unreasonable expectations emotionally. You get carried away. But on the plus side, this can make you very positive. And in some cases, even if you want to talk about careers, you may be a great candidate for being a life coach, where you can help other people maintain a positive attitude, an attitude of gratitude. if you will. And so people with the moon in the ninth house are not petty people. You tend to be emotionally generous. Again, I didn't see anything like that on here, but I do believe that that would be true for sure. And this is one of the reasons why, this is like having the moon in Sagittarius. And so the thing is, it's like it can lead to you being very tolerant. That's how we say that we tolerate differences in life. But when you tolerate nonsense, that can lead to excess, where you're allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. So you have to be able to balance that so that you don't that you're not naive about things, that you're simply understanding that everyone has, their quirks, and nobody's perfect, and, you're able to get along with people from different races, ethnicities. You're very broad-minded. And we need more of that in the world, but not to allow that to work against you in certain circumstances. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening, and if you would like a natal chart interpretation, I'd love to do it for you. The link to my website is below. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. Take care. Bye.